be on camera here. Yeah. Hello, welcome to Athens Speakout. This is program 282. Today is September 28, 2016. I have with me today here Dr. Robert Whaley and David DeWitt, who is an associate editor of the Athens News. And of course, Dr. Whaley is a historian, a diplomatic historian. And I am going to let Robert introduce this program, and we're going to be talking about the debate that occurred last evening.
Okay, today is the 28th of September. The topic is commentary on the Hofstra College presidential debate. And we're going to have a format in which the moderator, Steve, will ask both of us a question for 2 minutes, and Dave will talk for 2 minutes, and then Steve will ring the bell and say, okay, time's up, and second question goes to Robert H. Whaley for 2 minutes. We'll do that for 6, 7 times. I don't know how far we'll get. And then halftime, Steve will say, this is a station break, repeat our names, and then we'll do some more 2-minute questions till we get to the end. And somewhere, Steve will announce the 2 minutes left over are 1 minute summary for each of us, and we will have to sign off.
Okay, thanks for introducing the format there, Dr. Whaley. And by the way, I forgot to bring my bell, but that's all right. I've got to watch. My first question is for David DeWitt, and I just want him to comment on what, well, I guess the best way to put it would be what was your assessment of the first part of the debate last evening?
The first part?
The first part, yes.
Like the first, well, I think...
You just take it from the very beginning, you know, from after Lester Holt made his introduction. And
so the first thing that they talked about was the trade issue, and I think the trade issue was where Donald Trump was strongest. In fact, I think it was the only point during the evening where he was strong at all. And that's not saying that what he was saying was stuff that I necessarily believe. It's just that he was staying on point and on message, and he was delivering points that I thought were strong for his case. And he didn't fly off the handle or focus on himself too much like he did for the rest of the time. Overall, though, I think that the debate was like watching a former First Lady and Secretary of State debate with a drunk racist Facebook page. Because
tell us how you really feel.
Because she obviously Hillary Clinton was composed and well aware of the facts and well prepared, and Donald Trump was none of those things. I think his body language, his unpreparedness, his fixation on himself, all came very apparent throughout the debate. So I think most people agree this morning that it was a poor performance for Donald Trump, except for that first part that you talk about. I think that first 15 minutes or so where he focused on trade before she was able to get under his skin, he performed strongly.
Yeah, I was talking to Robert about this a little bit earlier, and the people that I come in contact on a daily basis thought that it was a poor performance on both candidates' part. And a matter of fact, last night on the radio, I think I was listening to a New York station, WABC. They had some commentators on there, and at the end they said, don't you really wish we had a different candidate for Republicans, and don't you really wish we had a different candidate for the Democratic Party? But that's that, and that was their comments and their beliefs. But you feel as though Hillary did, a fairly decent job.
Yeah. I mean, Hillary's not. I'm not a big Hillary Clinton fan, but as far as her performance next to Donald Trump, there's no question about it.
Okay.
He repeatedly got facts wrong, basic facts. He insisted on repeating those falsehoods. He couldn't focus. He didn't have any debate skills, like just general, simple college-level debate skills about pivoting, and he failed to even address Benghazi, her emails, the FBI controversy, any of the places where she is vulnerable. He was so fixated on himself because he's an egomaniac that he was unable to use simple college-level debate skills to attack her on the most basic things. I think it was a pitiful performance on his part. And whether or not you agree with Hillary or not, she at least showed competence as far as how to perform in such a setting. You could tell that she was prepared.
Right.
And you could tell that she had her op research, she had her lines, and she nailed every single one of them.
Well, we could probably conclude that Donald Trump did not take a debate class at the University of Pennsylvania. So
no,
but
no, but he didn't. And it goes further than that, though. His lack of debate skills. What he was doing, it seemed to me, most of the night was using the same things that he says on the stump on the campaign trail. Which amounts to vague word salad for the most part. It doesn't represent any
that was
sort
a
of
term that came
real
up last night.
policy
word
proposal.
salad. I'd never heard that before. But
Or I usually say gumbo, actually. But it
Well,
was
you're a journalist.
It was a
You have
gumbo of
much
platitudes.
better
It wasn't.
vocabulary
There
than
was no
most people.
specific ideas. He wasn't able to answer direct questions directly. I don't see how you could watch the performance that he gave and come away with the conclusion that Donald Trump knows anything about foreign or domestic policy, let alone has solutions. He painted a very bleak picture of the world inaccurately. He painted a very bleak picture of America inaccurately.
You need to start watching Fox News because they all thought that he did do well. Maybe not all of them. There's Alan Combs and Juan Williams on there, but Robert, what's your assessment of that performance last night by the two candidates?
Well, I'll give you my first reaction, and it's a little bit long, but we had spoken in the previous show we had that I don't think Trump had any idea of who he wanted to have as a model for a president. I don't think Trump had any previous understanding of history. He certainly didn't mention anybody who lived before Ronald Reagan, and he did mention Ronald Reagan, but I think he got it wrong. He praised Ronald Reagan for things he didn't do, and it was false. He was considered Ronald Reagan a great president because he cut taxes. Absurd. He cut taxes in his first year, 1981. And then in 82, 83, he kept raising them. So in the end, Ronald Reagan did not balance the budget or cut anybody's taxes. So that was just baloney. Well, anyway, to get to what they didn't say, who was George Washington, the first president? Was he a model? Who was the second greatest president? Abraham Lincoln, 16th president. He was a model. And Lincoln had Washington as his model for what did he want to do. Franklin D. Roosevelt, the 32nd president, 1932 to 1945. He had a model, Woodrow Wilson. And they had a model of previous presidents, and they would like to carry out their programs and advance constitutional democracy. The only word of democracy I heard was from Hillary Clinton at the very end. I don't think...
Now, you're saying that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, neither one of them have a model, or at least they did not mention
I mentioned that Ronald Reagan, Trump did say that he thought Ronald Reagan was his best president. He said that.
Yeah.
And he went on about how Ronald Reagan cut taxes. And I just said, that's false.
Right.
Okay? Now, I'm finished with that. Let's go on to what I want to say. I had seen Franklin Roosevelt in person. I was born in 1932.
1930.
Well, Roosevelt became president in 1932. Right. I was born in 1930. And he was president from 1932 to 45. And I saw Franklin Roosevelt in person, drive by in a car in 1936. Yeah. And then I heard...
On Long Island?
No, I saw that in Orlando, Florida. But in any case, I heard Roosevelt give his last speech on the radio, 1944. And then I heard Eleanor speak in person, because she lived long beyond Franklin. Yeah. And she was a very good speaker. And I heard and spoke, I heard and listened to and read Eleanor Roosevelt's performance as the First Lady. Okay? So she's one of the most important First Ladies in the history of the presidency. Okay, well, I guess I've said enough about Roosevelt. As of today, Trump didn't know much history, and he endorsed for the wrong reasons. Now, I endorse Ronald Reagan, but for different reasons. I never voted for Ronald Reagan. I voted against him for two times. Right. And I rated him very low. But after doing some history after he retired, I have reevaluated Ronald Reagan. And it was Ronald Reagan who went to 4 summits with Mikhail Gorbachev and ended the nuclear arms race. Right. I don't think Trump or Hillary ever mentioned the nuclear arms race. No. That's one of the most important issues of our time.
Neither one of them probably knows anything about it.
Yeah, well, Hillary knows a little more, but not much more. She didn't know.
Well, they didn't mention Reagan's dealings with the nuclear arm race, but they did talk about nuclear weapons last night.
What did they say?
And, well, Hillary pointed out that Donald Trump has taken a very cavalier attitude toward nuclear weapons. Yeah. And not only a cavalier attitude, he said that he doesn't seem to care if there's nuclear proliferation, which is unprecedented. Every other presidential candidate in history has opposed the proliferation of nuclear weapons and honored America's commitment to non-proliferation. And moreover, he indicated somewhat bafflingly that China would fight North Korea for us if there was some sort of war in Asia. And
totally ignorant.
Yeah, it's exactly. It's totally ignorant of world affairs, and I think it speaks to his unsuitability for the position.
Yeah, that's a demagogue. Well, anyway, I guess I'm finished with that.
Yeah, let's let David go again. I
guess I used my 2 minutes.
Yeah, you did.
There is one thing I wanted to mention about. I mentioned earlier where Donald Trump was strong when he was talking about the trade stuff, but there was something that I think that he got wrong in talking about the trade stuff. He basically indicated that corporations move their manufacturing and jobs overseas because taxes in the U.S. are too high. That's not why manufacturers move overseas. They move to other areas for cheap labor. It's not tax motivated, it's labor motivated. And again, I think that shows that he just fundamentally doesn't understand the issues which he's talking about, even when he was making strong debate style points on that issue. But he did that repeatedly throughout the debate. There were gaffes that to me were just striking, and I don't see how anybody watching could not see how bad they were, including the people at Fox News. Maybe they're just excuse making for him because he's the Republican and they have to root for the Republican. But he did not deny rooting for the housing crisis in 2006. She called him out on it. He did not deny it. He in fact praised his own real estate acumen in taking advantage of the housing crisis, where $13 trillion of household income was lost by the American people. He did not deny not paying federal income taxes. He said it makes him smart. Well, I'm glad he feels that it makes him smart that he doesn't pay taxes. But what it means for the middle class is that this wealthy billionaire is being a freeloader on the backs of the middle class. I find it wicked that he would say that. And the working class.
And the working
wicked
class
that he would say such a thing. Terrible. Unconscionable that he would say that. And not only did he say that, but speaking of the working class, he did not deny that he habitually stiffs his contractors when they do work for him if he's unsatisfied. Well, I say that we all go spend a night at one of Trump's various hotels, and when we're hit with the bill, we can just say we're unsatisfied, and apparently, according to him, it's okay if we don't pay it. So,
no,
I think that he repeatedly made those gaffes throughout the night.
But you know what? I tell you what, I watched all 3 networks, and I think there was at least one person on each network that had to agree with him as far as taxes were concerned. If you don't pay any, good for you. So...
Yeah, well,
where they're hiring these, he can hire the best CPAs in the world to,
and million-dollar attorneys to attack working-class contractors who have done work for him.
Right.
I mean, it goes beyond
it. Nobody's going to agree
How
with
many
that.
repugnant things did he say last night? How many things that display that he's a terrible person? He's freeloading on the backs of the middle and working class. That makes him smart. He's stiffing contractors because he has million-dollar attorneys that middle-class contractors can't afford. He didn't deny discriminating racially against black people in his housing projects in the 1970s. He said that he settled without an admission of guilt. Not to say that he wasn't guilty of discrimination. He settled without an admission of guilt. To him, that's a victory. To take advantage of people, to discriminate against people, to do people wrong. It's all part of his narrative that somehow he's smart and better for doing this. Well, he might think of himself as smart and better for doing it. I think of him as not meeting the basic standards of human decency.
Yeah. Robert.
Well, I would like to continue about Ronald Reagan, the good Ronald Reagan, the man who signed 2 nuclear arms agreements, the INF and the START 1.
Right.
INF, the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Agreement, took all the nukes out of Eastern Europe and Western Europe and made it a nuclear-free zone. And the second treaty, the Strategic Arms Reduction Arms Treaty, had the United States and the Soviet Union reduce their ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles, 1/2 of their stockpile would be destroyed.
Yeah.
And they sent inspectors on both sides.
Yeah.
So what Reagan did, in surprise to me, and surprise everybody in the United States, and it must have been a surprise to Trump because he never mentioned it, was to cut the stockpiles down so it extends the nuclear fuse. We have another 30 or 40 years without the threat of a nuclear war.
Right.
Okay, so I give Ronald Reagan A+ on nuclear disarmament. Now, it wasn't all his doing. This was done by his Secretary of State, George Shultz.
Right.
It was George Shultz who got Ronald Reagan to go see Gorbachev in 4 summits. I'll have more to say about that in the future. But Trump, as I would mention before, was just babbling nonsense about nuclear bombs in North Korea, China, Japan, and Iran. He doesn't know the first thing about it. Anyway, Hillary was a precise candidate, and she didn't have any president as a prestige because she is the first woman. So who was she going to use as a model? Bill? Or Donald Trump? I mean, Barack Obama. Who's her model? And she never went back to earlier presidents. So I thought she does not have much history. She majored in political science.
Well, she was a big fan of Eleanor Roosevelt, wasn't she?
Well, she's a woman. She was never president.
No, but I say she was a fan, you know.
Yeah, but she went to Goldwater's appointment. She just learned history when she was at Wellesley College. Okay, and she got involved in the anti-Vietnam War. Okay, that's how she got interested in politics.
Yeah.
But McGovern and Eugene McCarthy.
Well, she started out as a Goldwater girl. Was she at Wellesley at the time?
Yeah. She was a Republican. Her father was a
Right.
Republican. And Bill
Chicago.
explained all of that at the convention, how they met
Yeah.
and so forth and so on. So she was
They met at Yale, I think, didn't they?
Oh, yeah, they met at Yale. What did I say?
No, you're fine.
Yeah, Yale. Okay. Anyway, anyway. Hillary did a sophisticated, cautious, conformist job in explaining what Hillary would be like as the first woman president. She's going to go slowly, evenly, steady as she goes. That's her slogan.
Yeah.
And she was not going to be any cage rattler like Donald Trump. So I think she did all right for herself. But I don't think she has much historical depth. She has political science talent.
Right.
Anyway, my second reaction, different subject. My second reaction was my comment on Lester Holt, the commentator. I had expected the worst of him as an NBC pundit. But I was very impressed with his job as a moderator, and he was much more objective than I thought him capable of being. I thought he was going to game it in order to give NBC more credits.
Yeah.
If he's doing that, it was quiet. It was under the table.
I'm sure you know, Robert, he's a registered Republican, by the way, too.
Well, that didn't quite come across because he was very harsh on Trump.
Yeah.
Now, he might have been for the Republican Party. He might have been for
Carson or somebody.
yeah, the Bush family,
Yeah.
but they lost the primary.
Right.
So it's doubtful he'll vote for Trump in this coming up election. If he does, that'll be a secret to everybody.
It's hard not to be harsh on Trump as a journalist. I mean, the man didn't make it out of his first 2 minutes last night without telling an outrageous lie. He can't make it more than, I think they did a study, and he typically doesn't make it more than 3 minutes without lying whenever he's talking. The New York Times did a study where...
David, to be fair, I think both of the candidates as far as the truth detector is concerned are probably under 5 minutes anyway before they.
Yeah, Hillary's
tell
under
something.
5 minutes too,
Yeah.
but the sheer volume of it. The New York Times did a story on just recently on Trump where they showed that he's reversed course on 120 positions throughout the campaign on 20 different policy issues, including one time changing his position contradictorily on abortion 3 times within an 8-hour time span. The man, he is, as a candidate, an idea. There is no policy substance there, or at least no policy substance that anybody can rely on. So anybody who's supporting him is supporting the idea of him and nothing policy-wise that anybody can pin down in any sort of way, including the candidate himself. And that's fine if you want to support him as an idea. Even Barack Obama has repeatedly talked about through his presidency how elections are kind of taking the sense, the temperature of the American people, and that's what they mean. You know, it's not about policy. But what does Donald Trump's temperature mean?
Right.
I mean, a
I think the
thin-skinned, lying
I think the big question
bully.
is for with the American public is that Donald Trump beat out 16 other candidates.
That was in the primary.
In
we're
the
now,
primary,
We're now
but what
talking
I'm
about the
saying-
general election.
No. You misunderstood what I said. I'm saying, why isn't there another candidate? He's talking about
Why
the
was Trump
Republican
able to
Party.
beat
Well,
all of
why
them?
why is Donald Trump the candidate? Why isn't
He won the primary election. He got the votes.
we know in reality?
Well, what are you
I'm
trying to
saying-
tell us?
I think that
We're talking about people voting for people, and that's what happened. in
What
the
has the
primary.
primary got to do with the general election? Do you see that there are two elections?
I think that there would
I
have
do,
been.
sir. Do you?
I think that any one of those other Republican candidates would have had a lot better chance defeating Donald Trump if they had gotten a one-on-one opportunity like we saw last night. Because if you remember during the Republican debates, there were all these stages, all these podiums on the stage, and they were all trying to talk over each other all the time. And I think that the one-on-one, I think that plays to his advantage. The large field, played to his advantage the whole time. Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
But I think nevertheless the Republican Party got the candidate that what's that line from Batman? Is not the superhero this city needs, but the superhero they deserve. I think the Republican Party didn't get the candidate they need, but probably the candidate they deserve.
Yeah.
Well,
by the way, for the listening audience, I just like to say I'm a libertarian and I'm kind of neutral here.
if I may get back to what I think the debate meant in the general election.
Right.
We have a choice between two people, Trump or Clinton.
Right.
What happened in the primary is past history. I don't care about.
We always talk about history. I brought it up to David to ask him a question, okay? Go ahead, make your point if you have one.
I have a point.
Okay.
I would like to talk about what I think Mark Shields said. And I agree with Mark Shields. The final statement, Mark Shields and I agree, that Hillary won the debate. She closed the debate with saying why democracy is important for the American people. That's what this election is about. Will the American Constitution survive?
Right.
Or do we have a demagogue like Joe McCarthy who will say anything at any time?
Yeah.
And I don't give two hoots of what was said in the primary. The primary is over,
Well, forget
and
about the primary.
Bernie Sanders lost.
Yeah, he did.
Okay, that's the end of my comment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, I think that this election has all sorts of implications for the future of the American experiment, as it were, in the American Republic and the sense of democracy within our republic. I think that Donald Trump has repeatedly shown that he does not care to even bother to pay lip service toward the ideals of democracy and freedom of the press and freedom of speech. And, the ACLU did a report that showed that he's explicitly promised to violate at least the First, Fourth, Fifth, and Eighth Amendments of the U.S. Constitution. And I'm not surprised because I don't think that he knows what those amendments are if you were to ask him.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's true. It really is, this election really is about the American ideals as we've understood them and tried to grow into them through the history of our republic. And I don't think Donald Trump understands that history. I don't think he respects the Constitution. And I don't think he cares a hoot for democracy in any capacity.
You're probably right. Robert, you watched Mark Shields. What did David Brooks have to say?
All right, I shall go into David Brooks. David Brooks is technically a Republican, and he said that he thought that Trump won the debate in the first half. I would reduce that. He may have done pretty well on the first quarter of the debate. He certainly knew a lot about how to fill out the income tax. He was A+ on that. But I don't think that Trump asked the question that Lester Holt asked. Lester Holt. Yeah. He said, what is your idea of what is prosperity? That was the question he was supposed to address. I don't think Donald Trump has a clue of what is prosperity.
He answered it like a typical...
May I finish?
Go right ahead.
You're supposed to be the moderator.
All right,
You want to beat the show. Now, do I get 2 minutes or not?
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator.
Call me Lester.
Now, I was going to continue with
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Walk
Go right ahead.
what did Trump say? Trump's not what I was talking about. Lester Holt and
David Brooks.
David Brooks, and I was talking about the subject of prosperity, and I wanted to elaborate on the meaning of prosperity, and I wanted to say that Trump has no idea what is prosperity, and I will explain what prosperity means. It was the philosophy of Franklin Roosevelt. It meant full employment. It meant minimum wage for the working class, Social Security for the working class, Social Security for the old age. It meant Social Security for those over 65, and it meant private enterprise for the middle class, free market, and it also protected the bankers in the sense that Roosevelt was not a socialist, but he had certain socialistic inclinations. And I think that Bernie Sanders and Franklin Roosevelt had a pretty good idea of what prosperity it means. It means that all classes and religions are equal before the American Constitution, and they have to believe in the Bill of Rights. So that's what I think about prosperity. Would you have any comments on prosperity?
Well, I think that Hillary Clinton missed an opportunity when
Okay.
they were talking, when he started bringing up Reagan and supply side economics, trickle down. She really liked her trumped up trickle down line. She
Right.
used it twice. But I think that she would have done well by herself to point out that we've tried trickle down economics, supply side economics since the Reagan era for the past 40 years, and what we've ended up with was the largest wealth and income inequality gap that we've ever seen in our country's history. It's now surpassed the first Gilded Age in that gap. Whereas after Franklin Roosevelt and beginning in the Roosevelt administration, for those 40 years leading up to the Reagan administration, we were doing a very Keynesian style of economics that taxed the rich appropriately, and we saw the biggest growth in the American middle class that we've ever seen. People could afford mortgages, people could have
I have a
one-income
comment on
households.
Keynes.
And so I think that she could have drawn that
She
comparison.
could have, yes, she could have. But I think that Roosevelt understood Keynes. I think that Harry Truman understood Keynes. And I think that Eisenhower understood Keynes, and certainly Kennedy understood Keynes. But Keynes fell out of fashion during the Republican era.
Right.
And Keynes means that you put a floor under the poor and put a ceiling under the top. And we reached the height of Keynesian economics under Jimmy Carter,
Right.
when the tax rate was 75% for the rich. The rich have paid less and less, and American capitalism is going down the tubes, and this is where Trump is correct. Trump is correct.
That things have gotten
China is winning the industrial race. The American business is exporting corporations to Mexico, to China, and the debt is not being paid back. The budget is not balanced, and we're going to have a tough 4 years whether Hillary wins or not.
And I think that, and that's where he performed well, is in those first 15 minutes. But while I think that he may be correct in his diagnosis, I don't think that he's correct in his prescription, because
Right.
his
He
prescription
had no prediction.
is to prescribe the same disease
That's right.
that
You got
caused
it.
the
You
illness in
got
the
it.
first place.
Right.
And so I think we have 80 years of empirical evidence. In the first half, we have one philosophy. In the second half, we have another. We have two very different results. And I think it's obvious that the first 40 years is, if we are going to be prescribing something, that's what we should look toward.
I just wanted to say one thing, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong. we had adopted the John Maynard Keynes economic philosophy for that period that you were just talking about. Then didn't Milton Friedman
That's correct.
take
Yes.
over? And
Well, he
Chicago
took over the
School.
Republican Party.
yeah,
He did not take over the Democrats.
no, I didn't suggest that.
Okay, we have two parties.
Right, but Friedman and the supply side school and the trickle down have been
Right.
the dominant economic philosophy of conservatives since.
And Ronald
1980,
Reagan was a
at
supply
least.
sider.
Yeah.
By the way, we need to take a station break here. You're watching Channel 9, ACTV Channel 9 in Athens, Ohio. Today we have David DeWitt, the associate publisher or editor of Athens News, and retired historian Dr. Robert Whaley.
Right.
And we are discussing the debate, the presidential debate that took place in Hempstead, New York last night. And I think Robert gets the next question or wants to make the next comment
All right, right.
on the second or
Well,
third part of the debate.
well, I will refer to Lester Holt's second question. His first question was on prosperity, and that's how taxes got into it.
Yeah.
It was Trump who changed it from prosperity to taxes. That was his perception of the issue. But Lester Holt said, "What direction would you, the two candidates, like to see the country go?" And what did Donald Trump say? He said, "The country is going to the dogs. We're going in the wrong direction." There's no other presidential candidate ever said that. That is unique.
Well, he creates a very fearful picture, yeah.
And China was taking over, Mexico is taking over, and automobile companies are going to Mexico, cheap labor and so on. You know, that's true. But who's responsible for that? Who sent the automobiles to Mexico? Big business, big corporations. That was their decision. That was the Republican Party. Now, Trump would like to blame that on Obama and Hillary. Where does he put the blame for the loss of industry in the United States? That's where I think they missed the direction, okay? So, corporate industry controls the investments. And Holt would like to continue capitalism, I think. I think you're right. He is a Republican. But he did ask a pointed question, Mr. Trump. How are you going to bring those investments back? How are you going to get China to get that?
Yeah.
And what did Trump say? He said, well, the first thing I would do is stop the corporations from exporting anymore. We've got to put a close on that. So then they got into NAFTA, and Hillary admitted that it was a mistake to have approved NAFTA. And Hillary and Trump agree now that we have to develop America's infrastructure. We've got to take care of water pipes, highways. We got to take care of what do they call those bands where they put the electrical stuff?
Broadband?
Broadband, yeah. That's all part of the infrastructure.
Right.
A kind of a cliche word. And China is catching up in solar energy. So solar energy and climate change is the real problem of the future. India and China and the U.S. are competing for solar panels, and Denmark, Germany, and Israel, Scandinavia are small countries, and they are doing better per capita on climate change. And it remains to be seen whether, now Obama has a nice treaty. They're going to, China and the United States and everybody else is going to agree to limit carbon footprint. The question is, who is going to enforce it? But Trump's still appealing for West Virginia coal miners, their obsolete jobs. It's like investing in horseless carriages and horse-drawn carriages in 1896, 1903, when Ford, Mercedes-Benz were making the automobile. So that's going to be the wave of the future. Now, Hillary's answers were rather modest. She says, Black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic Americans, Protestants, Catholics, we're all in the same boat, and free trade is only helping one class, and we have to have fair trade instead of free trade. And she admitted that NAFTA was a mistake, and that the future TPT program, the Trans-Pacific Transaction Pact, that's going to have some clauses in it to protect organized labor and the environment. Yeah. That's where they and Holt is right on target of the future of the economy, whether he's a Republican or not, and he's right on target on the importance of global change. Okay. Well, I guess I finished that.
I think I just
2 minutes are up.
reiterate that I think that Donald Trump misunderstood the problem with trade, because he, again, reiterated his belief that corporations are moving because of taxes in America. And that's not the case. They're moving for cheap labor in other areas. And the other thing, as he tried to lay the blame for America's economic situation at the feet of Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, he said 2 things. He contradicted himself entirely within one sentence. He said that the economic recovery has been a disaster, but we're also in a bubble. Even if it is a bubble, it can't be a disaster. It doesn't make any sense. It's incoherent, and that's part of my problem.
Well, we had 3 bubbles,
with him in
and
general.
we've had a slow recovery. That's true. We had 3
It's been a slow recovery.
And the debt has gone up under Obama, and Hillary says
there's not much to do. It's being driven mostly by Bush's tax cuts and his wars in the Middle East, though. It's not really much that Barack Obama could do about that debt going up.
He did the best he could. And he saved Ford Motor Company.
And the deficit, I mean, he's been able to help shrink the deficit.
Can I make a correction there, Dr. Whaley?
Good.
It was General Motors and the Chrysler Corporation that the government bailed out. Ford Motor Company did not need the government's help in recovering.
Yeah, but they all prosper with the same automobile production. They're competing privately.
Oh, yes. Yes, they are. But what I'm saying is that Ford did not borrow any money.
That's true.
Yeah.
One other thing that struck me as they were talking about manufacturing in America, and Hillary brought up her desire to invest in alternative and green energy manufacturing and jobs for the future. And Donald Trump pointed to Ohio specifically as losing manufacturing jobs. And I found that ironic in a way, because Hillary was advocating for green energy jobs in Ohio, whose energy portfolio was frozen. Renewable energy portfolio frozen several years ago, and there was a study released recently that said that had it not been frozen, we would have had tens of thousands more jobs in the state and brought over $4 billion worth of money to the state through investment without those green energy jobs. So again, it's a matter of the facts. You know, the rubber not really meeting the road with Donald Trump as far as the facts are concerned.
I just wanted to add about that, Ohio, he did use Ohio as an example. What a lot of people, I don't think, realize, and probably up in your part of Ohio that they do, because I know around Toledo and different places in Ohio, there's a lot of auto parts made which went to Michigan. And when Detroit kind of went close to going down the tubes, it had an effect on those plants. A lot of those plants in Ohio did close, so that was related, to the auto industry.
And and while we're on the subject of alternative energy, Donald Trump did deny his climate change denierism last night.
Yeah.
And not only that, though, but his campaign was actively deleting his previous tweets in real time. So after Donald Trump said that he never claimed that global warming was a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese, his campaign staff, meanwhile, was backstage or in their office deleting this tweet from 2012 by Donald J. Trump saying the concept of global warming was created by and for the Chinese in order to make U.S. manufacturing non-competitive. So he's not only lying, his campaign is engaged in actively attempting to cover up his lies.
Yeah.
It's just so unpresidential. It's astounding to me that this is what this country is reduced to. I shouldn't be
I think
surprised.
what I take it from is that Hillary was on a positive note in telling, that what we can do and what is it, we work together, we can do it together or whatever.
Oh,
Whereas,
yeah, stronger together.
Donald Trump was negative in a lot of, like when you said, what did he say, the U.S. was going to hell or something like that, or
Yeah,
going to the dogs or something
and
like that.
that's been a picture since the convention. His convention painted a very bleak, very fearful view of the country and the world. And I'm surprised that he's doing so well, because Americans don't usually respond to such a dire picture of themselves.
The reason is that he gets 18-year-olds. They don't read a newspaper, let alone a history book. They look at tweets. They look at an email. Where is their brain? Football, sports,
Don't
beer?
you think that the American people, generally it's it's Morning in America. Take Reagan, for example. It's Morning in America. Hope and change with the Obama campaign. Usually the optimistic people
You
win.
have to get back to class.
Oh, discussion of class in this country?
There are lawyers.
Oh, I wish we
There
could
are
discuss
PhDs.
class.
They're an elite class, and I'm at the bottom of the elite. Okay? Who read books. Bob Sheik reads books.
Mm-hmm.
Sun Power.
Jeff?
Beal.
William Beal.
William Beal is on the cutting edge of do you think the working class of West Virginia read the New York Times? Do they even read the Charleston Gazette?
Right.
They see television day in and day out.
Right.
It's the television, radio performance. They're interested in image, acting. Who
Right.
tells the best jokes? Ronald Reagan had the best jokes. He was the best comedian we've had.
But why is his dark vision of America so appealing to them? Because they're frustrated?
Well, he's a real estate dealer. He knows that the real estate business is competitive. He does know that.
Mm-hmm.
But as Hillary said, what's good for your business is not good for the business of the entire nation.
Well, right.
There are people in different businesses besides real estate.
That was a good statement.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's, I guess, what were we really debating? I kind of got off the subject, I think.
Well, yeah, we just started. We were talking about global warming, and then we got into just his vision of America being very bleak. And another thing, he keeps getting factually wrong. He keeps claiming that crime is going through the roof in America. Crime has been going down in America for decades.
Well, it
It's
is
an
it is
empirical
true.
fact.
The people who voted for him from West Virginia and Ohio were people who had voted for the Democratic Party for 20 years, but they didn't get their Social Security increases, and they didn't get their wages, and they've lost jobs.
Yeah.
So they say, well, the party has failed. I'm going to vote for the opposite party, even though the opposite party is stupid.
Well, I think that that is valid, and that's what he is tapping into with his fearful rhetoric and his fearful depiction of our country. I think he is tapping into the general frustration among working class people that their wages have stagnated,
Right.
and that their lives are not better, and their standard of living has not gotten better, and we have the first generation in American history passing down a lower standard of living to the next generation.
That's
and
true.
people are very upset and frustrated with that. What I can't figure out is why they think that a reality TV billionaire real estate mogul is going to fix anything for
They
them,
don't make the
or
distinction.
cares about
They
them
don't
in
make
any
the
way.
distinction.
I just don't understand why they think he would be the solution. But
You see,
I understand their frustration, and actually, that's kind of what the Bernie Sanders campaign was all about anyway, is it was playing on the same frustration, except from a left side, saying your wages have stagnated, your standard of living is going down, and what Sanders was proposing was, making the elite ruling
Okay. Well, see,
wealthy classes pay more.
you see, I have a sophisticated understanding of job performance. If I got in an airplane, I want a pilot. If I go and have a kidney problem, I want to go to a medical doctor who's an expert. Well, the guy from West Virginia, who's never read a high school textbook on biology, doesn't know the difference between marijuana and cocaine and marijuana and OxyContin. He's just plain dumb. You got to have an education. The people who work in an automobile factory have low educations, except for sports. They're good on sports. They're good on music. They're good on football. But what do they know about politics? If they can't identify any president before Jimmy Carter. You ask these students.
No, I know.
Do you know anything about the president of the United States?
If
No.
you get into all of that stuff, it just becomes a very futile and depressing exercise of,
Thomas-
the majority of people can't name their U.S. senators.
Okay.
They can't name their
All
U.S.
right.
Congress
Okay.
people.
But Thomas
they don't know
Jefferson-
who the vice president
Thomas
is.
Jefferson said-
If you start asking man on the street basic
Thomas
civics,
Jefferson said,
you'll get depressed
in
very
order
quickly.
for democracy to survive, you must have an education.
Oh, I know. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
My favorite quote by James Madison ever are people
Right.
who mean to be their own governors must
Right,
arm
and
themselves
we had
with the knowledge
school
that
boards with progressive education.
education gives.
Yeah, we had John Dewey, and he said we have to have primary schools in every county in the United States. What is Trump doing for education? He's cutting the educational budget.
Yeah.
He's not interested in general education.
I don't think he's interested in anything, and that's another contrast we could draw about last night. It was that oftentimes he was presenting problems, whereas Hillary was presenting proposals for
Hillary
solutions.
Clinton has a broader education. She's
Well-
gone to Wellesley.
Yeah,
She has a liberal arts education.
he has a fine education. He went to the
Well,
Wharton School.
It's
but-
technical. It's technical. How to sell real estate.
Yeah, I think
I
it's a
don't
matter
think
of
he
personal priorities. I
He
think
doesn't
he's-
know Keynes. He doesn't even know Adam Smith.
I think
He doesn't know the theory of economics.
No, he would have never studied
If
that.
I could just interject as a moderator.
Good.
I would like to say that to graduate from the Wharton School, which is part of the University of Pennsylvania Business School, you would have to take economics. That's the core requirements in that school. I don't think he just went there to learn how to sell real estate. Now, that's what he did because that's his father was in
Okay.
that business.
Right.
But just,
Okay.
to be
now,
fair.
now, I had a year in law school. And when I went to law school, in the freshman year, you have property, contracts, torts, civil procedure. But you only take the big course, corporate law, when you're a junior and senior. You only have 3 years for law school.
Right.
Now, Hillary is good on corporate law, but what does she know about criminal law? Criminal law is sneered upon. The only people who go into criminal law work for the mafia. And there's a Chicago mafia, and there's a New York mafia, and it's a disgrace to go into the criminal law. The professors all sneered at anybody who went into criminal law. And we have a crime problem. We don't have community policing. We still have a race problem that goes back to the Civil War.
Yeah.
We don't have a Martin Luther King. Barack Obama is a politician, not a Martin Luther King
Yeah.
moralist.
Robert, we have 2 minutes remaining in the program, so
Okay.
I'm going to give you a minute, and I'm going to give David a minute, and you can just,
Well,
or do you want both minutes?
well,
Wrap it up.
I'll say that my 3 minutes were on the reaction of Holt's 3 questions, and I didn't really get to the third question. The third question would have been, what is your foreign policy? And both of them did poorly on that. They're both
hawks.
They both started
Neoliberal
talking about
standard
issues. They both started talking about things they didn't know anything about, and I'm suspicious of both Hillary and Trump on what they would do about the ISIS terrorist problem, and we need a good lawyer to define the difference between murder in the United States and international terrorism. That's lacking.
Yeah.
Where are our international lawyers today? That's my 2 minutes.
David, you got something to say?
Yeah, I guess I want to say that I understand that a lot of people this year are looking for change. They're frustrated with American politics. They're frustrated with the system. They're frustrated with the establishment, and they want an agent of change. And Hillary Clinton represents the establishment. She does not represent change. She represents politics as usual. And I want change too. For years, for my entire adult life, I've been wanting a transformative figure of change to come in and shake up the system and provide us something new. And I know that Hillary Clinton is not going to be that person. But I think that last night proved that Donald Trump, as much of an agent of change that he is, it would be disastrous change. It would be incompetence. It would be ignorance on a level unprecedented. It would be him obsessing over his own vain self to the detriment of the country at all costs, just like he obsessed over his own vain self at the detriment of his performance in the debate last night. So my end point is, I don't know if Hillary Clinton convinced anyone to vote for her last night, but I think that Donald Trump should have convinced almost all of us that he's wholly unworthy of our vote.
Okay. I'm going to end this by saying thanks for watching ACTV, and believe it or not, we're all friends here.
And we all believe in debate.
That's right. It's the oxygen of democracy.
Good.
Right? Thanks for watching.
Thanks.